Hey everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday. And thank you for letting us pop up on your LinkedIn feed or your Facebook feed or your YouTube feed. I am Gabe Smith, CCXP. I'm the content manager for the Customer Experience Professionals Association. And we thought we'd take some time today to catch you up on what's been going on with your association and share some ways that you can lend your expertise and your experience to get involved. So, as always, love to hear from you. If we just popped up for you, you've got us up on your screen. Let us know. Comment. Where in the world are you tuning in from today or tonight? We'd love to see the CX community representing their city, representing their region, representing their country. So send us a message in the comments. We want to hear from you. Let us know where you are. So, what do we have to talk about today? Why are we coming at you on this Wednesday afternoon? We are going to honor the work and the contributions of one of our CXPA members and their contributions to our association and to the community. We're going to give you some updates on what we're seeing around the CCXP exam. We're also going to be talking about some ways that we're helping to advance sound CX practice through support of CX teams. And we're going to talk about a new way that CX teams can become involved with CXPA. We're also going to be sharing, talking about how you can share your thought leadership through CXPA's content channels, through a variety of channels. And we're going to be giving some special shout outs to some CXPA members who are really just going above and beyond to support the CX community and to benefit their peers around the world. So I see we've got some folks who are on already. Hey, welcome, Manoj, joining us from India. We've got Ethiopia. Fantastic. Keep letting us know where you're tuning in from. So I shared with you what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm excited for who we're going to be talking about those things with. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest for today's broadcast. That is Barbie Fink, CCXP, board chair for the CXPA, and Greg Melia, CAE, the CEO of the Customer Experience Professionals Association. Hey, Barbie. Hey, Greg.
Hi.
Hi, Gabe. Hi, Manoj, and everyone else tuning in.
Yeah. So glad that you could be with us today. I know we've got a lot of updates to share, and I see Anthony is joining us from the hot Houston, Texas. Welcome, Tony. Great to see you here. So let's just start with some kind of general updates. Take the pulse of, what we're seeing in the CX space. Barbie, I want to start with you on this one. I know you're really well connected to the CX community. One of the wonderful things about you, you're always so accessible to CX professionals from around the world. What are you seeing and hearing as we close the book on the first quarter and head into April?
Well, first, I want to say how inspiring it is to connect with CX professionals who are members of the CXPA. And I never turn down an invitation to have a conversation. And through the mentoring program, the Mentor Match program, and the people that I'm mentoring, as well as people that I just talk to or people that I hear from on LinkedIn, I am loving those connections. What I'm hearing is that people are really appreciative of our CX community, the discussion forums that we have available. People find really, really good information and help from their peers there. And there's lots of recognition and appreciation for how much people are able to feel comfortable reaching out and then also getting information on what they need. I'm also hearing from new members. We have a special place in our forums where new members introduce themselves. And what I'm hearing from new members is they're really, really excited to be part of our association and that already they're getting good content and learning from being a part of it. And I guess the other thing that I want to reflect on, especially after this past year, everything that we've been through around the world and with regard to the pandemic, just the importance of continued empathy and kindness and connection to each other. And that's another thing that I hear people appreciate a lot.
Yeah, excellent, Barbie. And, speaking about empathy and kindness, I know that we shared out a video that you had created about why CX is important to you. And, you touched on that theme of kindness and empathy so wonderfully. So I know that's, near and dear to your heart.
Absolutely.
Greg, what would you like to add to that? What are you seeing in the community as we enter the second quarter?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is great is here in Columbia, South Carolina, spring has arrived. We have flowers on the trees. We have weather warm enough that my adventuresome daughter is swimming in our and enjoying being out and about. And we're also seeing that sort of rebirth happening in the CX space as well. We're seeing new jobs that are being posted. We're hearing about promotions for folks. And we're hearing about people delivering on those New Year's resolutions to earn their CCXP certification and ramp up their career development, because the opportunities in CX are growing in 2021 as we see the world reopen and see the economy begin to recover.
Yeah. Greg, that is great. And I want to come back to the point around certification and professional development. Just wanted to acknowledge a few folks who are tuning in. We've got Hugo tuning in from Mexico. We have Noma Luby, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, tuning in from Swaziland. And we have Lena tuning in from Colombia. Love seeing the breadth of global representation that we have here. So, Greg, let's focus in a little bit more on CCXP. So, what are we seeing in regards to CCXP as we head into this next quarter?
Yeah, so for those tuning in, I know many of you are familiar, but as a brief reminder, CCXP Certified Customer Experience Professional serves as that third-party validation that you have the experience and the knowledge and that you've demonstrated those things to be able to hold yourself out in terms of your own internal pride, in terms of your recognition in the network, but probably most importantly, that connection to employers. We're seeing CCXP preferred increasingly pop up in job postings and job listings in all parts of the world. This is something that we're seeing from leading companies like Amazon.com, to look for CCXP credential. So that's a really positive. The second that we're seeing is that the number of people that are earning and maintaining the CCXP credential continues to rise. And I think I was peeking just before we came on the call. We're now at 1,222 CCXPs. And increasingly, folks are doing that by taking the CCXP exam from the comfort of their home with remote proctoring.
Yeah, Greg, and speaking about from the comfort of home, Tony said that you've got the best virtual background, and if it's not virtual, then that's the best room ever. # beautiful setup.
Thank you, Tony. That is my collection of CX and anthropology books, and so I appreciate that comment. Happy to move here last July.
Yeah. Barbie, on the topic of CCXP, I know this is a subject that's near and dear to your heart. So, for those listening that are considering taking the plunge and becoming CCXP or applying for the CCXP, what advice do you have for those viewers who are thinking about earning that credential?
A couple of things. So one, just the credibility of having that certification is really important. And I think will become even more important as different companies begin to recognize that as something that they prefer in their job postings. If you're thinking about wanting to access the knowledge and information that's needed, the first thing that I would suggest is checking out CXPA's recognized training providers. They have focused all of their content around the 6 competencies that we have identified that are part of the CCXP. And those competencies are based on a really detailed level of research and job analysis that has gone out to many, many CX professionals to look at what happens in the day of a life of a CX professional. What are the things that they do? What are the skills that are required? What are the tasks that they accomplish? And so that has formed the basis for the 6 competencies that we have that are a part of the CCXP exam. So check out our recognized training providers. They are all vetted and they are recognized by the CXPA as having valuable content that can help you as you learn in your CX career as well. The other thing that I would suggest is creating an account on cxpa.org if you don't already have one, and joining our peer-to-peer CCXP support community. And then there's 2 other things that I would suggest. One of them is as you go through the process of thinking about going for the CCXP, make sure that you personally have the hands-on experience to say that you've been able to do those things, that you have those skills. And as you complete the application to sit for the exam itself, be really specific and provide examples of the things that you have done that align to the questions that are asked. I will admit that the form that we have available to fill out on CXPA.org basically shows smaller fields, but take the time to include all of the details and all of the examples that align to those competencies.
Yeah, some great points there, Barbie. And check out CXPA.org if you have questions. If you also have questions, drop them into the chat, and we're happy to respond to you there as well. Great points, great thoughts, Barbie and Greg. So I want to shift gears a little bit because we talk a lot about enabling individual success through involvement in the CX community, and that has been and will remain incredibly important. But I want to shift focus a little bit and talk about how CXPA is supporting customer experience teams. So before we dive into that, Barbie, you have a wealth of knowledge and experience. So what are some of the hallmarks of a typical CX team, and how is CXPA supporting those teams?
Gosh, the hallmarks of a team, I think, are people that come together for a common mission, a common purpose, something that they want to accomplish. And there may be different roles within that team, but as that team comes together, they are responsible for achieving specific things. And one of the ways that we look at supporting teams is recognizing the different skills that teams need, and then providing content and information that is helpful to bringing those teams together. I would say that teams are often confronted with the same kinds of challenges in being catalysts for an overall organization, in connecting with leaders across an organization, in being change agents, and helping to get other employees across an entire organization to understand the value of CX and to understand how they can personally make a difference. And so looking at how we support teams as a whole, as well as individuals, is an important piece of what we do at the CXPA.
Yeah, so I know I hear the phrase a lot, small but mighty, used to describe CX teams. These are folks who are doing the hard and sometimes lonely work of advancing CX in their organization. So Greg, tell me about some of the other ways that we're trying to support these folks as they're working to affect that change.
Yeah, consistently when we talk with CX professionals, one of the largest challenges that they have is making sure that the rest of their organization understands their professional credibility and understands that the processes that are being brought forward are ones that are based in accepted practice throughout the community. Nobody doubts what they hear from the accounting department. But for some reason, we as CX professionals continue to be asked why we've structured a question the way that we have, or why we're recommending a particular tool. And often that's because people didn't have the benefit of learning about CX when they came through school or education. So we're tackling this on every single level. We're creating videos and information at whatiscx.com that provides quick and easy information that you can share with your C-suite and coworkers about the definition of CX, the key elements of CX, and the role of CX professionals. We're documenting how customer experience is taught in colleges and universities so that we can influence and make sure that what's being taught is in line with what happens in practice. But most importantly, we're working on guidance to help you in your organizations this year and for every year forward by creating a book of knowledge that will standardize the information that you can bring forward to say, when we're putting together a CX practice, the steps and considerations that CXPA community agrees as consensus information include X, Y, and Z. We're also working to develop guidance on how you can better understand and leverage the perceptions and needs and perspectives of the sales and marketing department, of the production and design departments, of the C-suite, so that you can facilitate better conversations across the entire organization in order to make sure that you as a CX professional are a catalyst for change, not the person who is expected to be a singular Superman or Superwoman that is driving change. We need to drive change together. CX is a team sport, and that's a really big focus on where we're going and what we're doing. Support the professionals and help you be better team leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Greg, and I love, you mentioned consensus driven, and I think that's a really the true power of CXPA is being able to convene these members from around the globe with their voices and their perspectives to drive consensus that helps move us all forward.
Yeah. It's incredibly important. There are a lot of different sources that you can get CX information from, but when it comes from one perspective, you're only benefiting from that particular viewpoint. Whether that viewpoint is constricted by being tied to one software system, one consulting company philosophy, or one individual's experience, undoubtedly it will not be as rich as the consensus-driven perspective that draws on the difference and celebrates and leverages the difference of perspectives that enrich us all as we look across different continents, across different industries, and across different experience.
Yeah. So I want to stay on this theme of looking across and looking globally, to shift and talk about programming. Back in February, Greg, we announced that it was our intention to focus on really virtual programming and really enhance our offerings and make sure that what we're doing was relevant to the needs of CX professionals around the world. And so since that time, we did a survey of CX pros to gain a sense of what are people interested in, what kind of content they want to see. What do we learn from that survey, and how can our viewers be a part of our content this year?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, let's acknowledge that there are some tremendously positive things that have been happening recently in the world, and there's still some tremendously troubling things that are happening in the world, and particularly in relationship to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some areas of the world are talking about coming out of lockdown, while others are talking about returning to lockdown. What's consistent across all of this is that we're truly in a global society today. And what that means is that the organizations that we work with are working across country boundaries. They're working across cultural boundaries. They're working across these many different social settings. And increasingly, people are looking for ways to give trusted advice to their employees and to their staff partners in a way that is safe and secure and doesn't require people to travel or to leave the communities that they're providing support for. So virtual programming is an important element for us. Also, we've introduced, just to segue from the last segment to now, we've introduced a new team membership package so that your CX team can all have access and support to participate in CXPA at a much lower threshold than before. Packages start from under $2,000 with 10 memberships built in, which is about half of what you had to do before to get involved with CXPA. But we're also prepared and committed to making sure that we have a transparency about the way that we're member driven. So we did a survey earlier this year. I was pleased we used Confirmance Horizon survey tool to allow us to hear both from CXPA members and from other stakeholders to learn what are the top priorities for education in 2021. And you can find this information at cxpa.org/2021 program planning. And to share with you, the things that people are most interested in are skills building presentations and case studies. Particularly, there are 16 topics that come out of the CCXP-CX framework that folks are interested in seeing. And I'll just tease you with the top 3. Quantifying the return of investment of CX, designing and leading CX strategy, and translating customer insights into operational requirements. You can see the rest of the list at cxpa.org/2021 program planning. And even more important, if you have experience in any of those areas, particularly if you're able to lead a program for us in another language, we would love to have you submit a proposal to join a panel or to lead a virtual session, because peer-to-peer learning is a core part of CXPA's success and the way that we help advance together by supporting and learning together.
Yeah. Greg, that's great. And I also, I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. I also.
You sound good from this end, Gabe.
Okay, I'm just getting an echo. Hopefully, it's just on my end. Okay, I also wanted to mention a few other ways that people can be involved in sharing their, thought leadership with the global community. One of those is through the CXPA blog. If you are a CXPA member, you are able to create a blog post that is available on our site. That members and non-members can view our blog. Your blog can be distributed in our weekly newsletter. So we welcome the contributions of people from around the globe as they share their thoughts on what makes great CX. The other is through our Insight Exchange video series. If you've got an idea for a short form video that we could share out on LinkedIn through our content channels, would love to hear from you as well. You can check out cxpavideos.com. You want to see some more examples of those. And also, we do a variety of webinars, thought leadership webinars. We're always looking for our members' thoughts on what they've seen. So again, get in touch with me, Gabe at cxpa.org. If you're interested in learning more about how you can share your thought leadership through content at CXPA. I also wanted to acknowledge, before we move on to our next part of the discussion, a couple of questions that are coming in. So I want to ask, Naomi asked a question. I've been recently reviewing MBA programs and am surprised or disappointed to not see CX and EX included in the programs. Has the CXPA community discussed getting visibility of CX content into these programs? I don't know who wants to take that one, Greg?
I will absolutely take that one. So Naomi, thank you for asking that question. It's one that's heavy on our minds as well. So yes, we absolutely are taking a look at this question of how CX is taught in higher education. If you visit cxpa.org/highered, you'll see the survey that we've been conducting. And what we found is that there are more than 70 colleges and universities that offer one or more course in a customer experience. And when I say that, I'm just talking about the programs that use the word customer experience. There are others that use other related pieces and spaces, but we really wanted to understand who is using the term customer experience and what are they teaching. When we look at that, there are programs at both the undergraduate and graduate level, but the most frequent place that customer experience is being taught is in the extension elements of colleges and universities. Those are the courses that are intended for executives to return to receive training and development. So we're just moving into the second phase of that program. If you're a CXPA member and you're interested in getting involved, take a look at cxpa.org/volunteering and sign up for the second phase of CX in higher education. But I agree with you. If we want to secure the future of customer experience as a management discipline, we need to make sure that MBA programs and undergraduate students are being introduced to the concept when they're working through their curriculum, so that when they move into a role, whether that be a CX role or it be a different role in the organization, they understand that there can be better results and outcomes when the customer's perspective is considered in addition to the business outcome that we're driving for our organizations.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Great question, Naomi. Thanks for asking that. Wanted to share one other question that we've got, and that is, how do you see themes like digital, big data, RPA, and AI influencing the CCXP competencies in the profession in general going forward? So you gets to that, Malcolm's getting that question of relevancy. So Greg or Barbie, I don't know who wants to take that one, but great question, Malcolm.
Yeah, Barbie, do you mind talking about how you think some of these topics will influence CX to the future? And then I'll handle the question of how they relate to the competencies in the CCXP.
Okay, so we have to be cognizant of all of those topics. Our world is evolving. The discipline and the practice itself relies on some of the same foundational elements. But if we think about things like AI, we have to consider what that means to the experience that customers face. All of us have been through experiences where we call somebody, a company, to get help for something, and we're on a robocall and we can't get around it. We have to consider the impact of things like that on the experience that customers have. From a digital perspective, people are engaging with organizations, with companies in order to get what they need in different ways. And in our virtual world, it's the same thing. And all of those pieces have to be considered as we look at what it is that CX professionals have to do to ensure that the experiences that customers are going through in all of that are still positive. And Greg, I'll let you talk about the second part of this.
Yeah, no, I love that. I want to extend a little bit about what Barbie was saying, as well, is it's amazing the strength and the power that the platforms that we're seeing that are in place and the platforms that are being developed can augment the traditional practice of customer experience. The ability to use facial recognition to determine a customer's sentiment, the ability to use beacon technology to measure the time that is spent in a store and to correlate that to the experience and the outcomes, the perceptions that the person's having. That's fantastic, because we know that some of the traditional tried and true methods of feedback surveys are shifting and changing. That people are expecting things to be done with less effort, and they're expecting the outcomes to happen oftentimes with quicker correlation. It's not enough to wait until the end of the cycle, look at the data, and then adjust. People are looking for the journey to be orchestrated and to be influenced in the steps along the way. But as Barbie so rightly began her comments, all of those things are an extension of the fundamental discipline of customer experience. And when we talk about the CCXP certification, we're talking about a certification that is about the leadership and management of a CX program. It is not about your fluency in one particular software system or one particular space. It's your ability to understand the strategic needs of your organization and of the different technology platforms that are available, and to craft and design a system that is going to work. And when we think about going to work, it's not just a question of what's the latest and greatest. It's also the question of how does this meet the needs of the different stakeholders that are involved? How well does it integrate with the other systems that you're using? And how well does it make sense for the financial return of investment that you're able to see in your particular instance? So CCXP as a framework is based on the theoretical strategy level as its primary thought level that it's testing. We're not testing your ability to tweak the settings on a particular software platform. There are platform-specific certifications, or designations for that. But it is rooted in the current and evolving practice of customer experience. And for that reason, every 5 years, we do an in-depth survey where we go out to CX professionals all across the globe and ask them, what is the work that you do? And how important is it to the success of your CX program? That survey was conducted in 2020. We're analyzing those results now, and that will be turned into an updated framework that will come forward and be released later this year. So I don't want to talk too much about that because we'll bring all of the details forward later in this year when we're ready to share it. Some people hear a new exam content outline and they get scared. I'll give you two pieces of advice. One, when you went to college or when you look at bookshelves like this, you probably noticed that there's more than one edition of the same textbook. And when you change from one edition to the next, some things are added new, some things might go away because they've fallen out of practice, but the core elements stay consistent. So don't be scared that everything's going to change. The second is that I can guarantee you that if you're thinking about earning the CCXP, nothing is changing until August 1st at the earliest. So you've got time to execute on your studying and you're earning the CCXP if you're committed to earning it before anything does change.
Yeah. Great points, Greg. And, I keep coming back to the kind of the theme of that comment, which is around, the power of consensus and community, that this is not a top-down approach to changing a framework. This is driven by CX professionals around the globe who are actually doing this work.
Yeah, and we were amazed, to see the number of people who took the time to complete the survey, the number of people who came together as a peer review panel to look at the data, the conversations that those skilled professionals, which was a multinational group of folks that came together, and the work that they've done to make sure that the CCXP framework does consider these elements and references them, because we do want to be explicit and forward-looking. But we also want to make sure that you're being tested on the things that are tried and true and essential, and not things that are just a passing fad. I sort of remember a few years ago, there was a social media platform called Clout. And Clout would tell you, how influential you were as a social media person and platform. Clout doesn't exist today. If someone had added Clout as part of a certification exam, you would have been working towards oblivion. So we want to make sure that things are tried and tested and the things that you can rely on to be successful in your career and to get results for your organization.
Yeah, great points, Greg. Thank you, Malcolm, for asking that question.
Can I riff for just a second on
riff
Malcolm's
away?
Question?
Yeah.
So Malcolm talked about big data and talked about AI and talked about the digital transformation. The thing that I want to riff on there is, as a customer, for every single one of us, if we put ourselves in the shoes of a customer who's going through an experience, isn't it helpful to know me as a customer? So some of the elements of big data and digital transformation and AI are ways that are helping companies get to know more things about their customers and what they need. So as CX professionals, we have to be aware of that. The other thing is, I think you mentioned it earlier, Gabe, the small but mighty team. As small but mighty teams who are practicing CX, the other thing that we need to focus on is scalability. And so some of the things that Malcolm raised there I think also can help us as CX professionals be more scalable as we do the work that we need to do. So that was my riff.
And I love that. And that is something that we have to figure out is this connection on scalability and big data. But, I think that it all really begins with making sure that you don't try to find a data or technology focused solution. You try to find a better way to execute the core fundamental elements. How do we better listen to the customer? How do we better understand their sentiment? How do we better track their journey? And how do we improve their journey along the way? Those are the key questions. Technology is one of the keys to the solution.
Yeah, and Greg, those are the key questions that we need to get great CX professionals into these roles to be asking to help their organizations move forward. Yeah,
great,
fantastic. I want to take a moment. I'm actually really excited for this next discussion. We've been talking a lot about the community and celebrating the role of the community and moving the work forward. So in this next part, I want us to not just celebrate the community writ large, but I want to drill down and focus on some specific individuals that are really going above and beyond to advance the work of CXPA and advance the work of CX globally. So giving some shout outs and some love to some CXPA members. And I wanted to start on this because there's no shortage of candidates. I wanted to recognize Martha Brook, CCXP. Martha and I were emailing back and forth a couple of months ago, and we were having this conversation about B2B CX and sort of the unique needs of practitioners in that space and how we could be more relevant and provide greater value to people in the B2B space. And Martha said, I'd love to host a monthly call that's specifically focused in this area. And she just took that ball and ran with it and started having these monthly sort of roundtable calls where I think, she had the first call, 70, 80 folks tuned in, and she'd only had a limited time of promoting the event, and it's only grown since. And so, Martha, if you're listening, just want to say thank you for convening these conversations and really taking the initiative on that. So, Greg or Barbie, who do you want to celebrate? Who do you want to give a shout out to? Barbie, you want to go next?
I want to give a shout out to Heather Gilbanks. And I met Heather Gilbanks last year on a call that we had, and have just always appreciated her perspective and her sensitivity. But one of the things that she did towards the end of last year is she posted something in our community discussion forum about the need for some sort of CX playbook. And the number of responses that she got to that post was really, really overwhelming in a lot of ways. And with Heather's leadership, we are coming together as a community to basically build a CX book of knowledge. And I'm really, really excited about that work. And it recently kicked off, and so appreciative for Heather's leadership on that.
Awesome. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, there's so many folks that come to mind, but I think I'm going to start with two related folks that are helping CXPA reach and engage a part of the world where we traditionally have had some challenges, and that is figuring out how we really bring together the immense opportunity to bring together the CX community in India. I want to thank two different people for that. On the content side, we have been partnering with Taragni Consulting, and that has been an amazing collaboration and a partnership for us to be able to tap into their leadership. And to think about how we can create webinars that pair together the CXPA community and the Indian thought leadership in the CX space. And that is an amazing place that we've had success. And then the second is making sure that we have a space for the peer-to-peer community in India to grow and to move forward. And the person who's been spearheading CXPA India as a network is Anish Kamath. And I have to say a huge thank you to Anish for his work in not only tackling his own interest in CXPA, but making sure that he's bringing others along to be part of the leadership committee. And that's a fantastic operating model. There's a ton of energy that is coming out from CXPA India in our partnership with Trogni Consulting. And I'm just so thankful to all of those folks.
Yeah. Greg, kind of building on that, talking about growing CX and in a market, I was thinking about Bruno Guimarães, who we just had a live stream with Bruno and a couple of other wonderful Brazilian CX professionals last week to talk about growing CX in Brazil. Bruno is the leader of our Brazil network and has been instrumental in really launching that network and growing the CX discipline in Brazil. I mean, he's done tremendous work, not just recently with CXPA, but over the past years to make sure that CX is a thriving community there. So shout out to you, Bruno. Appreciate you.
Yeah, and to that entire LinkedIn session, if people haven't watched it, we'll have to make sure that we put the link back in the recording here. That was a group of passionate folks who spoke so eloquently to the right way to structure customer experience and to share their experience. So it wasn't just a question of CX in Brazil. It was really a question of how do we advance CX in the world. Yeah.
And hey, Marcelo, glad you're joining us from Brazil. Fantastic. All right, Barbie, anyone else you'd like to give a shout out to?
So, as we look around the globe and we look at our growth as an association and we look at the pockets around the world where CX is thriving and booming, one person that I want to recognize is Mark Harshies. And Mark is located in Dubai, and he is helping to bring the community in Dubai together. I've only been on a few calls with him, but I am really excited to get to know Mark more because I'm so appreciative of the energy and the passion and the enthusiasm that he carries with him in everything that he's doing there. So I wanted to give a shout out to Mark.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'd add, Mark's involved in that Book of Knowledge project that you mentioned with, Heather Gilbanks. He's a CXPA recognized training provider, and he's a leader in the Dubai network. So thank you, Mark. We really, appreciate that. And I think I'll go ahead and jump in and add a shout out to a longtime CXPA member who answered the call. And we have had a lot of conversation on this LinkedIn Live talking about CX in higher education. And there was nobody better suited to help us get that project up and running than Stephanie Toom, CCXP. Stephanie is working on her own doctoral project. And she said to me, Greg, this project is so important. I will help get phase 1 up. She said, please, once we get phase 1 up, bring in the reinforcements, make sure that we get some more people involved. So, Scott Gilby and Anita Siasos and Alicia Freitz, thank you to all of those who are helping. And thank you to the volunteers that have already put their names in to help out with phase 2. We're excited about bringing this forward because, the next steps, and I think we see some action on this in the chat, the next steps are to say, okay, how do we influence the courses in MBA programs and in courses that are already being taught? And then also, how might we develop curriculum? How might we bring a more consistent place there? And I'll add a third. How do we create connections so that CXPA members can find a higher education course? And how do we create connections so CXPA members can hire graduates from good quality CX programs that are there? Because it's all about having the right CX team and the right skills.
Yeah. Fantastic, Greg. I think we got time for one more. Barbie, anyone else?
Yes. So every now and again, you have interactions with someone where every single interaction that you have, you learn something. And the person that I want to acknowledge personally for that is Stephen Ramirez. Stephen has taken the leadership of our diversity advancement committee that we have in place. And I want to thank him and also thank the other members of that committee for really thoughtfully thinking about our path forward as we advance diversity and as we think about equity and as we think about the notions of belonging and inclusion for all of our members. And really look at that from the perspective of how it fits in the world of customer experience and how we can all be cognizant of our place in that. So thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on Stephen. Had the chance to do a LinkedIn Live with him earlier in the year on the concept of empathy and how we can actually teach empathy in our organizations. Check that out on YouTube. Fantastic conversation. One of my favorites this year.
So as always, when you start making a list, you realize along the way that you didn't say somebody's name that you want to make sure that you did say. So, I want to specifically acknowledge Dr. Anil Pillai's leadership at Taragni Consulting. He was the person who had the vision to say, let's create this partnership and let's make this move forward. And then on the higher education, I have to acknowledge Shelley Chandler, CCXP, another long-term member who has just been lights out helpful as we try to build and understand this space so that we can connect and influence the higher education project.
Yeah. Great, Greg. We don't want to forget anyone, but we know that inevitably when doing these, we will forget someone. So, maybe we'll do a blanket shout out to those who may be involved in these projects that we may have missed.
Yeah. And, if you're watching and you've been influenced by a CXPA member, whether it's through a mentorship or through a response that they posted on the discussion thread, post their name, tag them here, thank them here, join us in recognizing and celebrating the community. We are so thankful of the power that comes from the connections and support. We can't do it alone. We wouldn't want to do it alone. So thank you all for collaborating and making a stronger CX and CXPA community.
Yeah. So on the theme of celebration and recognition, we've been doing special shout outs. But I mentioned at the top of this broadcast that we have a special honor for someone that we're going to be talking about today. And I don't want to give this person's name away just yet. But Barbie, hoping you can tell us give us a little bit of background about this person who we're honoring in a special way today and how we're celebrating their contributions. Tell us a little bit about this person.
I would love to. So this is an individual who I have known for a number of years now. I didn't meet him right away when I first joined the CXPA, but what I saw as I was kind of becoming more involved was his leadership and his positioning within a time of transition to help us come out on the other side in a really positive and healthy way. The level of leadership and thoughtfulness really of this person are things that helped us to move forward. And I would like to acknowledge Bob Asman, who was the chair of the board of directors 2 years ago, was the past chair last year. And what we would like to do is publicly acknowledge his contributions to our association, his contributions to making us better, and really honor him with the newest CXPA's Past Chair Emeritus Award.
Barbie, that is so great. Congratulations in order for Bob. I wanted to share, Greg, and I want to come to you here in a second, but I just was talking to our CXPA staff member, Derek Iverson, yesterday. We were talking about Bob, and he said, Bob is just really fun. No question about it. He always makes it very clear that he's listening to you. So Bob has made such an impact. And Greg, as you reflect on Bob's involvement with CXPA, what are some of the things that stand out to you in terms of his impact, and how is he particularly deserving of this emeritus honorific?
Yeah, there are two things that really stand out to me about Bob. And the first is his demonstration in the way that he leads is a demonstration for all of us on how we should be a CX leader. many of you have heard at one point or another, and some of you may not. My background in formal training was in social anthropology, and oftentimes they say social anthropologists are practiced at the art of asking damn fool questions. And so when I came on to the role of CEO under Bob's leadership, there were so many different times that I brought questions forward to him, and Bob was always so inquisitive. He always would sort of answer my questions with, "That's a good question. We should think some more about that, or we haven't thought about that, or that's a good question. Here's information that I've known from the past to help you think this through further." And so, Bob is a great guide by the side, as they like to say. He is somebody who can make sure that you're thinking about not only the right issues, but that you're thinking about them together. And so that's a really important place. The second is I think we have to acknowledge that Bob has played a tremendous role in the professionalization of the CXPA itself. He was the leader who recognized that it was time for CXPA to pursue having a full-time CEO and did the difficult work of running that search. And I'm sorry he couldn't come up with anybody better for you. But I'm thankful that he didn't.
That's great, Greg. I also wanted to, we got in the comments here, Anita makes a really great point. The things that stand out to me are how he demonstrates the CXPA value of authenticity. Couldn't agree more with that, Anita. Derek says, "Congratulations, Bob. Thank you for all your contributions to CXPA. Always a pleasure working with you." I consider personally, Bob was so supportive when I came on board CXPA, and one of the first projects that I worked on was our guide to developing CX job descriptions, a project that had been underway before I started, but which I came on to try to help get that project to the finish line. And Bob was so supportive of me and kind to me, and so that really meant a lot. And we're so glad we were able to get that project to completion. So,
and two other things that stick out to me. Bob was instrumental in the formation of the Emerging Leaders Award. And thank you to his leadership, of that program, the idea and bringing it forward. And then the second is he's a contributor to the new Customer Experience 3 book that is out, and the leader of a All Things CX podcast. So, what I love best is that Bob is always looking for ways to contribute and to give back. And he is continuing to shine brightly as he helps to advance the CX profession.
Absolutely. And I'll say to those of you who are watching, if you've got a great memory of Bob that you want to share, drop in the comments. I know that we'd love to see it. I'm sure he'd love to see it as well. So that's great. Congratulations, Bob Asman, CCXP. We appreciate you. We appreciate all that you've done and all that you will continue to do in service to the CX community. So before we go here, I want to ask one question, because there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of things that we're working through, but there's a lot of things to be optimistic about. So, Barbie, as you look ahead the rest of this year, what are you optimistic about?
I would say that I am truly optimistic about the connection that we have to each other, the way that we support each other, the way that we come together to understand what we need in order to advance as individuals in this career that we have many times chosen. And there's a really special connection, I think, that happens in our community where people engage with each other and we help each other out. And as I look at the world around me, it's that connection and it's that supportive help that we offer to each other that continues to make me feel optimistic, not just about what we do as the CXPA, what we do to provide the content that is needed, what we do to create a community space, but it's really about bridging that connection in the world around us. So I am optimistic about that.
Fantastic. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, the external improvements that we're seeing through the world are fantastic. And I am optimistic that this will be a bright and growing year for CX programs, around the world. And then we'll all begin to be able to celebrate as the world begins to reopen. And as it reopens, spend that time with your family. Spend that time with your friends. Spend that time with your coworkers, getting reconnected. But also think about the way that you can leverage these new capacities and these new elements that we have going on to meet new people on the other side of the world. Learn what they're doing in CX and figure out if you can help them advance or if they can help you advance. What are the ways that we can all come together and help CX be recognized consistently throughout the world as the preferred way to have businesses be successful in a way that drives happiness for customers, business profits, and success for organizations, and employees that are engaged and proud of what they do. It's such a great time to be working in customer experience, and it's such a fabulous opportunity to see CXPA truly be a global voice that comes not from one person who speaks, but from the many people who are participating through the various channels and networks and LinkedIn Lives.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, and I think about my source of optimism, and as a microcosm, Greg, of everything that you were just talking about, every day I'll take a look at the CXPA discussion forum, and it's sort of very illustrative of people coming together across the globe to help one another solve problems. And that's how I would boil it down. And I've never been a part of a community that's as welcoming and supportive of this one. So my source of optimism for us moving forward is in all the folks who are listening and viewing this conversation. So thank you all. Excellent. So one of the last things I wanted to do before we sign off here today, a couple of save the dates. So Greg, do you want to tell us, we got a couple of save the dates, so we want to make sure that people get on their calendars for 2021 and 2022.
Sure. Okay. Well, first, let's put an entry into your daybook, and this entry should be for this week. Before you leave the office at the end of this week, visit CXPA.org and create an account. Whether you're joining a local network or you are becoming a member or you're looking up how, as a member, you can volunteer and get involved, that's a thing that I'd love to see you put in your daybook or your calendar for this week. Looking ahead, let's block out Tuesday, October 5th, 2021 on your calendar. That is the day that we are going to have a fantastic 10th anniversary CX Day, 10th anniversary of CXPA, not 10th anniversary of CX Day. So we'll get to celebrate again, in the future. But this is an opportunity for you to celebrate together with your peers and to have pride in what we do, increase awareness and understanding. And we've got a committee that's coming together to give you resources and tools to make that fantastic. And then looking forward to 2022, May 2nd to the 4th, 2022, we will be getting the CXPA community together in Orlando, Florida, in the shadow of Disney, to be able to talk about customer experience, leverage all of this work that's being done on higher ed and best practices and case studies and awards and emerging leaders, and just really have a conversation about how do we give you better and increased success as you move forward, and how do you reconnect and see your old friends again and make new ones too.
Greg, did I get those dates right? I was running out of banner space. And so I think May 2nd through 4th, 2022. Was that right?
Correct. Yep.
All right.
We'll
Fantastic.
move the conference if we need to.
Save the date. Greg, Barbie, thank you to you both for your leadership. And thank you to all who've tuned in. As Greg said, we hope you'll consider becoming a member at CXPA.org. If membership's not something you can afford at this time, you can always create a free account, unlock some of the site features, get involved. We hope to see you. Until then, until next time, take care and stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.